Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. You can join our community of storytellers by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, signing up for my newsletter, following me on Instagram, and more. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance. Episode 77 of The Human Experience is Ethan's story. Ethan has experienced a lot of adversity in his life, from growing up with a single mom to being in a car accident that should have taken his life. But that's not Ethan's story. Ethan's story is one of resilience and perseverance, and he has dedicated his life to bringing that inspiration to others around him. This episode was recorded in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So Ethan, I've been on your website, so I know that you've told your story quite a bit. So I don't think you're not new to this at all. This is something that you do quite often, is tell your story to inspire people. But where would you start your story? If I asked you, what is your story? Where would you start that?
Go back and then lead it up.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I grew up in a single parent household of 5.
Wow.
That's considered disfranchised, disadvantaged. And it's not a situation where it's my fault or my siblings' fault. It's a result of decisions made by adults, such as the men and, of course, my mom. And far too often, some people want to have a woman look innocent who's a single parent, because my late grandmother used to be a single parent of 4 at one time. She originally had a child when she was a teenager. And at that time period, you didn't have all these benefits, have all this child care to accommodate. It's more family oriented, where everyone's got to look out for each other, to the point where when you become old enough, you can start making a living for yourself as a woman. And eventually, my grandma did start working for many, many years while trying to take care of her kids. And in turn, she ended up becoming a homeowner. And that's rare for a woman that became a single parent to become a homeowner. But it wasn't until after maybe in the 1980s when she became a homeowner. Prior to that, she was renting a house in different locations in Coatesville. So moving forward, it's like a past meets present, where when my mom became a single parent, she had the Section 8, the food stamps, the medical insurance, child support, and I believe LIHEAP. That wasn't available way back in the day.
Sure.
In conclusion, I just share that to tell other women that it's not always good to be a single parent and try to put on this thing that you're strong and everything, because it's not your role to be strong for the decisions that were not made correctly. It's time to reflect on the decisions and think about how they can do things better, such as having a life coach, a mentor, have a man properly vent the men that they're communicating with. That way they can have that little 5-minute conversation of man-to-man talk. But moving forward, from the way it's looking, there's millions of households that are single parents, and the legal system is like setting up to incentivize women to become single parents. But also realize the feminist movement played a role in it as well, where they were telling European women, get a man for your education, we'll give you your rights, while telling the other group of people, we'll give you these benefits, we'll give you your rights, but you can't have a man living in your household. So that's pretty much what encouraged cohabitation.
Interesting.
And as a result of that, they want to put the African American men out the house, because it was much easier to become homeowners back then, because normally a man would graduate high school, and within 3 to 5 years of working in the workforce with all his money saved up, he could become a homeowner, take care of his family, and save for the future and create generational wealth by starting a side business. But life has a way of changing things.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, that's not something that I really can speak to. Obviously, it's not my lived experience, but it's a really interesting perspective to be coming from as somebody that grew up in a single parent household. And was that your whole life that you grew up in a single parent household?
It was, because my mom had full custody. That's what the court decided. But there was 2 situations that happened where I was not living with my mom. The first situation, I'm going to talk about that for my next upcoming book. It's a part 2 of my current book. My current book is called The Inspirational Story of Ethan Poetic, Chronicles of Adversities, Education, Sports, Relationships, and Resiliency. I'll save that second part of the situation for my next book, and it's very deep, and I got the original documents to it. That's very serious. The second time I was not living with my mom's because they made this agreement for me to live with my dad.
Oh.
And I remember like it was yesterday, I got my 5th grade promotion. My cousin's parents are there, but my parents are not there. So then later on, as the summer shows up, my mom says 2 things. I'm just paraphrasing everything. My dad's going to sign me up for football and I'm going to be living with him. And this is me going into 6th grade. And that was not the right choice to make because, number one, I didn't find out they actually didn't get along until at my football game. So leading up to everything, I was living with my dad and his wife. She had became pregnant. And, I was given more undivided attention compared to being in a single parent household. But eventually, all those decisions led to a not so good ending. What ended up happening one day was my grandmom, who lived right down the hill from my mom, called my mom, told her to come down. I need to talk to you. So basically, my mom, my aunt, and my grandma are in the living room. And my grandma just cut right to the chase and said, "Do you want your son back?" My mom was puzzled, like, "What do you mean?" She tells my mom, "My son is filing for custody for your son, full custody." And my mom was taken away. And next thing you know, my mom does something she rarely does, which is show up to one of my sports activities. She showed up to my football game. And then after the football game, her and my dad get into an argument. And I'm in the middle of it. I leave my dad. He takes me to my mom's house. He tells me to pick up my sneakers. I'm not even in the house 20 seconds or 30 seconds. He opened up the door and says, let's go, let's go. Meanwhile, there's a phone call. I answer, it's my stepdad. And he says, stay right there. My mom's on the way. And I'm in the dilemma of what do? Listen to what's being said on the phone or listen to this loud bass of the voice? I left. I wasn't given enough time to find my shoes. So we left. The next day, I got a gym detention because I ended up wearing football cleats to middle school the next day. And I go home, tell my dad, my stepmom what happened. My stepmom's supposed to pick me up. And then from there, I get I serve my gym detention. Well, the gym teacher was just curious, why did you come to school in my gym class with football cleats on? I told him what happened. He felt sorry for me. He's like, you know what? I'm going to let you go early. I leave. Then my childhood friend, me and him had the same birthday. He says, my mom's looking for me. Less than 5 seconds later, my mom said, you coming with me. Let's go. We go out to the street. My stepmom comes. Her and my mom have less than a 20-second conversation. And then I leave with my mom. We go back up the hill to her house. Less than 5 minutes later, I hear this loud knocking on the door. It sounds like someone's going to break the window. And it's my dad. They had this argument, and my dad lost. And it was just a situation where I didn't see him for several months afterwards. And my stepmom ended up doing the dirty work of giving me my football equipment by dropping it off. And that's when I found out my parents actually never got along.
Oh, wow. So where are you in your siblings?
I'm the second child for both my parents because my dad had already started a family with a different woman while he was in college in Philly. Unfortunately, she dropped out of college and never finished. Then he got her pregnant again and got my mom pregnant. Him and my mom were never serious.
Okay. So your parents were never married?
Yeah, they weren't even together.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And you said you were one of 5?
Yes.
Okay. So did any of your other siblings have the same experience that you did with the back and forth?
I have an older brother. He has long passed away.
I'm sorry.
I don't know his father because there's such a big gap.
Okay.
When it comes to the next 2 siblings after me, there was turbulence back and forth. There was times where he was not doing his responsibility as a father with paying child support. He wasn't always being active with them. And, the responsibility gets put on me to watch him instead of me developing as a child. And then another child comes into the situation, and now I got to watch her. I was in a situation here. I'm in 6th grade. I go to school during the day. Then right after school, I got to go up the hill to my house, pick up my sister next door from the babysitter, bring her over, change her diaper, do all the fatherly duties, burp her, do all that, cook, make sure my brothers are eating dinner. Then I got to go all the way to the other side of town, either by bike, walking, catch a ride to football practice. Because I could have quit because of that situation.
Yeah.
But I stuck it out.
Yeah.
And that was my life for that whole football season. And then when the football season ended, that was it. Now it's just me focusing on my siblings. It's just a situation where when men don't show up in the picture or sometimes get pushed out of the picture, you end up putting that responsibility on somebody else. And unfortunately, that was me. Because during that time period, our older sibling became an adult and he was working at McDonald's. And, he has freedom to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So he wasn't necessarily sticking around.
He was around, but at the same time, he's a grown man and he has a right to, earn a living. There was a time period where the responsibility was on him when my mom was with the third guy and he left. Yeah. And it's more like passing down the bucket.
Yeah. So do you feel like you really didn't have a childhood in a sense because of that?
I felt like I did have a childhood, but I just felt like due to certain people's decisions. But since this is your show, I'll just keep it real. Due to the decisions of my mom and the men, I realized on self-reflection, they were the unhealed versions of themselves, not the healed versions of themselves. And here we are going to church, but we're not leaving better than how we came.
Oh, wow.
And I realized and this goes back to mental health, when a person doesn't resolve things from within and start to rehab and start cutting things out the menu, you pass down generational trauma, wounds, and scars. Now someone else got to figure it out, but it probably happened to them for them to figure out, like the adults in the situation. But I realized they have a choice to make, either be the victim or be the victor. Yeah. And we can't be like putting that on children because it's setting them up for failure.
It is, truly. But the way that you talk is so interesting because it sounds like that wasn't something that was necessarily prioritized in your childhood, but you have such a vocabulary for it now, which to me says that you've done a lot of work in that realm. So how did you get to where you are in that sense with your mental health?
A lot of things. Like, for example, people always thought I was tough. Like, One example is like when we was at our grandma's house, just me, two different siblings. That was through my dad and our cousins. We would be there. We would fellowship together. Man, my grandma was real old school. She had the fly swatter ready to hit somebody. And then, you know, she got mad about something. Next thing you know, she wants to give people cayenne pepper to taste. My cousins are hurting with their mouths burning. Me, I didn't feel much because the difference is I'm mixed with African and Puerto Rican, and in that culture we do eat spicy foods. Meanwhile, my other cousins have more of the African genes. One person is mixed, and my two other siblings are mixed like me. We can take the heat, or shall I say Latino heat or Hispanic heat. And then there's also some situations where people think I was being tough, when in reality I was holding stuff in. And as a result, things end up coming out in the worst way when I'm in school, being in the class kind of looking for attention, because I wasn't getting that attention at home from neither one of my parents.
Yeah.
Then there's also some situations where I felt like I was a star in gym, where I got the spotlight on me, and now I have a reason to really be into athletics, because I got this attention from people praising me. I'll tell you a quick story. Like when I was in the spring of 10th grade, there was this guy. I'm not going to say his name. I'll just say he was always the fastest guy. He had more of a stable environment with his mom and stepdad and his siblings. He lived up the hill from when we was living in Lancaster here. And he always had the women, well, during the time period we were teenagers, I'll say girls. And, you know, my stepdad at the time would always say, he's jealous of me. I understand this. Guy had more food in the refrigerator, cabinets, nicer clothes. What is he jealous of me for? So we would always race for fun. And then one day we raced. I thought I was going to lose like usual. And at the time I grew to 5'9.5", weighing between 128.5 to 132.5. I remember because I got that physical. Next thing you know, I beat him 3 times in a row in a race. I became the fastest person in Sterling Place. It was the upset of a lifetime. Like, down goes Frazier. George Foreman knocks him out. Words spread around fast. I became numero uno, also known as number 1. First person picked for football, basketball, or sporting games. And, you know, I like that attention as well. But 2 things came out of it. I realized the reason why he was jealous of me because it's like a perception. He thought I was happy, but I really wasn't happy. I thought he had better than me, but it turns out he didn't have a healthy relationship with his father. And it's one of those unspoken conversations where things need to be mended. Ultimately, I did get help just by being around like certain people. Like, for example, there's one guy who moved next door to me and his family, and he would always come home from second shift, and I was cook. I had the windows open, and he smelled the food. He says, "Can you make me a plate? My wife's not here." Made him a plate, and it became a continual thing. And one day, he invited me over to his house to play the video games. We start bonding. Then we start playing the sports, you know, out in the parking lot and everything. And then next thing you know, later down the road, he says, "You're like a son to me." So that became my first father figure. Then there's also people in the Mennonite community who will come in the Sterling Place, pick up the teenagers on a bus or minivan for like just more fellowship. And it's not a sense of church. It's more asking questions, because in the church you can't ask questions. You gotta sit there and listen to somebody speak.
So you guys moved to Lancaster when you were in?
It was 2001, in the middle of my 8th grade year. I was projected to start varsity sports by my 10th grade year for football.
In Coatesville.
And track.
Yeah. And why was the decision made to move here?
I have a theory behind it, but I need proof behind it. Basically, my mom said she wanted something different or better, but I have a theory that's not always the case.
Yeah.
I felt like there's more to it, and hopefully I'll find out some more evidence about it. For me, I kind of question it because parents rarely move in the middle of a school year because it's a big transition for not just me, but all my siblings. Mm. And the fact that, decision was made without talking over with us. I'll give you an example. Like, I have a cousin who's in the military. He and his wife and his kids live in Hawaii. He already been stationed out there for the last 3 to 4 years. He could move back to where he wants to move back to here, but he decided, I'm going to wait till the end of the school year to make that transition, not the middle of the school year.
Yeah, that's hard, no matter who you are or what's going on in your life. Transitioning in the middle of a school year to not just a new school, but a brand new town. Because did you have any ties to Lancaster before that?
I had an uncle here and a second cousin. Prior to that, I remember us just going up here for either going to the Mills restaurant, visiting the Park City Mall, then there's the outlets. Then that's it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was just kind of out of the blue, it seemed to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So how did you fit into your life in Lancaster after you moved? You were on this track to become a varsity athlete in Coatesville. Were you able to achieve that when you got to Lancaster?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to because I talk about this in my book where the guy who was living with us, he had a serious drug and alcohol problem. And my mom always want to take him back. And that's called puppy syndrome. Oh, you see this dog out here looking kind of down and now. Let me give him some dog. Let me give him some dog food. Throw him a bone, see what he does. Same thing with a man. And far too often I see women want to fix up a man that's not doing good when the reality is that this man's you're supposed to provide him the resources, not be the resource. Mm. And what I mean by that is you're not supposed to enable somebody because when you got kids involved, like in that situation, me and my siblings, it's not a good idea to cohabitate with somebody who has a serious drug and alcohol problem because we're going to feel the effects. We're going to feel the aftermath. And unfortunately, due to that decision and a couple other decisions, that's when Children's Youth Services got involved. I remember like it was yesterday. I'm in school. This woman called me, come out of the classroom. She told me to follow her. Next thing I know, we go into this room. I see a social worker right there. And she's interviewing me. And I'm like, what's going on? And as a result of that, and the simple fact that my siblings were not old enough to watch themselves, I had to watch them. Meanwhile, the guy who's in the drug and alcohol problem, he's in and out. So now that's costing me 3 years of varsity sports. I can't get back. National signing day, me competing in pen relays, me making first team all-state and everything else. That was going to be my ticket to a better life. Go to college, hopefully graduate within 3 years, maybe go for my master's. And because of the decisions my mom made and other choices, the responsibility got put on me. And that's something I did not like.
Yeah. So when social services got involved, they put it on you?
No, it's just a situation when they come and get involved, they're going to come by the house. Mm. They want to see who's watching the other kids.
And you were a suitable person to watch kids being a child yourself?
Yes and no. Like, it forced me to grow up in a way where when I was living in Coatesville, my aunt would sometimes fill in. And while I go to football practice or a neighbor would come by. Here in Lancaster, my mom didn't build relationship with the neighbors.
You were the only person to be there.
And she didn't want people in her business. But yet, when the cops come by the house, you're inviting people to be in your business. and I'm just telling the truth. It's not meant to put somebody down. It's just, this is what I experienced firsthand. This is something I remember vividly.
Yeah.
And then the result of me not going to college, the result of me working at Arby's. And I pretty much did the same thing my older brother did, which was work at a fast food restaurant. And I look back on life, I realized I should have been in a better environment where I had more opportunity, not excuses where someone's trying to put their responsibilities on me.
Sure. Yeah. So, but you before we started the show, you said you did go to college. So when did you eventually get there?
It was after I overcame a near-death experience.
Okay. So let's talk about that. When did that happen?
It happened March 19th, 2011.
Wow. So you were out of high school at the time.
Yes.
Were you still working at Arby's at the time?
No, I was not. I was invited to be in, let's see, right now it's called a Hollow Prep.
Okay.
Before it got rebranded to that, it used to be called Children's River Chance Foundation. It was started by Jordan Steffi and his family.
Okay.
It was started because there was a kid in his class or his high school needed money to raise for his brain surgery. So he told people, if I score my 1,000 points my senior year, can you help donate money? And he used that opportunity of the attention to him to shed light on the situation, to make an impact. And not only scored his 1,000 points and overachieved in getting the money raised for that person's brain surgery, their life was changed forever. And later on, that person thanked Jordan Steffi and his family for doing that for him because it made his life better and allowed him to become a productive member of society. And that became the beginning of Children's River Chance Foundation, where he wanted to help people further their education, but at the same time do the work in high school with visiting colleges, improving their SAT score, PSSA, one-on-one tutoring, and taking tours of businesses. Where I came into the picture was in 2010. That was the original plan, but unfortunately, 2011, that car accident put a lot of things on hold.
How were you put on the radar for that? How did you get introduced to that?
To Jordan, it was just, I was so used to seeing him on television, the newspaper, hear about him on the radio. And one day, at the time it was called in church, it was a Saturday service. He sat next to me and I are you Jordan Steffi? He says, yes. We shook hands. After service, we talked. I told him who I am. Then we exchanged numbers. And then by coincidence, we kept running into each other in the city.
Oh, interesting.
First, it was near the Mix. Then another part of the city. Then another part of the city. Then he introduced me to his family. At the time, Uncle Vic was just got out of state prison or federal penitentiary for doing his situation. And he wanted people to help raise money to sell the wristbands for him to come speak, but at the same time raise money for Jordan Steffi's nonprofit organization. And I overachieved with selling the wristbands. And then at the event, he named me as a person to be in the program.
Wow.
It was over 5,000 people. And then as a result, that's how I got into the program, got my picture with Michael Vick.
And so what would I know you didn't end up getting to do what you wanted to, but what would the program have looked like for you? What would you have done within the program?
Basically, I was an adult, so things are much different compared to a teenager. A teenager, back in the day, used to be, they get accepted based on referrals. But then it got changed to where in order to get into the program, you got to go through a boot camp. For example, first 6 weeks, you got to be at the program at 5 a.m. Then there's also learning the Rubik's Cube, getting 2 or 3 letters of recommendations from people in their school, and a bunch of other activities to prove their worth to get into the program, but also maintain good grades while being in the program. For me as an adult, I didn't have to do that because I wasn't in high school anymore. And most of my teachers, some of them have retired, and the administrators have changed. So all I had to do was just show up to the place 2 times a week, do certain activities with them. But when that car accident happened, it was just devastating to the point where, I wasn't supposed to be here. I had 99% chance of death versus 1% chance of life.
That's so wild. So March, you said 2011?
Yes.
So what happened?
Long story short, we were helping out Jordan Steffi's nonprofit with selling Deuce brand watches at the Media Heights golf tournament. We exceeded our goal for the breakfast and lunch shift. Everything good. Everything was a success. We leave. I leave my aunt and her, at the time was her fiance. We wanted to go pick up her 2 grandchildren. Then we end up driving on Route 30. We're supposed to go to Philly. Last thing I remember seeing is the outlets, Tanger Outlets to be exact, an Olive Garden, and, at the time it used to be a Hess gas station, but then it changed names. Within a blink of an eye, boom, I wake up in the hospital. 2 IVs in my veins, arms exactly. I have a left black eye, lost all this weight. I noticed I got staples near my groin. I noticed something doesn't seem right. I see a woman crying at the door. But to back it all up, basically the guy who was our driver, he took his medicine before he got behind the wheel. And as it says on every label, do not take the medicine while driving or functioning something that's machinery. Mm-hmm. And as a result, he went from one lane to the other, ran into an 18-wheeler.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and next thing you know, traffic is backed up 3 miles each way. Here comes the ambulance to check on my pulse. Here comes the fire department where they cut the car in half. Then the police come by, put up the yellow tape, attempting to direct traffic. Then they put a neck brace on me, put me on a stretcher. Then after that, I was supposed to die within 3 to 5 minutes of internal bleeding because my aorta got severed from the seatbelt.
Oh, my word. How many of you were in the car?
5.
Wow. Did everybody survive?
Unfortunately not.
Yeah.
My one cousin who was next to me passed away. The guy passed away. My aunt suffered several broken bones. My other cousin who was on the father's side, it was just more of a mental thing for him. Mm-hmm. No broken bones.
Wow. So you were supposed to die within 3 to 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. You're unconscious at this point, right? Like you don't know what's happening until afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you wake up in the hospital. How long had you been out of it?
Well, I woke up twice. Let's see. They did the surgery. Prayers were said for me. Then the first time I woke up was on a cloud 9 state with all the medicine.
Yeah.
The second time I woke up was that time I told you before, and I saw that woman crying at the door. Turns out she was crying tears of joy because she originally thought I died on the operating table.
Wow.
Because that was high. That was as high risk of the surgery as it was.
Sure.
And yeah, I spent like a month in the hospital, a month in rehab. I got put on a feeding tube for several months. I had to relearn how to pick up stuff. Yeah, it was a journey of a lifetime.
Yeah, that's incredible. How, I mean, beyond it being a miracle, how did you survive? Did they tell you like this happened and it allowed you to survive for longer than you were supposed to?
Yeah, I'm considered a walking living miracle.
Yeah.
Because it was something that supernatural happened.
Mm. Truly. I mean, your aorta got severed. That's incredible. So you're in the hospital for a month. What are you feeling while you're going through this? You know, your life changed so drastically in literally one moment. Once you wake up and once you kind of realize what your life is going to look like now, how do you feel?
Looking back on everything, I was numb because I was on all those medicines. Then on top of that, you know, I was seeing people on their best behavior. People actually go out their way to come visit me, talk to me on the phone. Then there's one person allowed me to use their iPhone, log into my... I'm surprised I didn't even remember how to log into my Facebook. And there were some messages that I didn't answer. Some people thought I ghosted them. I told them what happened. They were like, whoa. Yeah. Then I look on my Facebook wall. It's like, wow. All these people saying they're praying for me. One person saying I'm a tough cookie and all this other stuff. It was real. And then, you know, I got fast forward everything. I really wasn't planning on talking about this. It's just life has a way of pushing me outside my comfort zone. When I used to work in the sports program, you know, I'm not sure if you're a parent or not. You know, most parents want to know who's working with their child, because sometimes HR makes mistakes.
Yep. And I am in HR, so yeah. That's my day job.
Yeah. So basically what was going on was this. Parents would start these, you know, little conversations with me just to know my name, then they research me. And they show up. They pull up their cell phone and say, "This is you from the car accident?"
Oh, wow.
I said, "That is me." My original plan was just go to work, go to hack, go about my life.
Yeah.
And I told my boss what's going on. He said, your inspiration, you got to figure it out. And as time went on, I realized there's two sides of it. What people didn't see from me is that it takes vulnerability, humility to talk about this stuff.
Sure.
What I didn't see from the other side of it was they saw not only inspiration, a comeback story. They also saw somebody who doesn't suffer from PTSD, not addicted to the pharmaceuticals, also known as opioids. They see somebody as a walking, living miracle, but they're also with their child and being a productive member of society. Because they see so many people who get these surgeries and being on drugs just to numb the pain, end up addicted to stuff, and their life changes from that.
Yeah.
And then the fact that they found out I'm in college, they're like, this is unusual.
Yeah. That's awesome. So when did you actually decide to write your book then?
It was in the spring semester at Mills University during the midst of COVID. There was this Greek family that invited me over for lunch. We were having a good time eating, and one person said, "Ethan, you should write a book about your story." Then another person said, I'm like, nothing. But it's hard to say no when some people feed you some champagne, lobster, crab legs, and some good food, and a keto man's heart to his stomach, and eventually I gave in. There was no negotiating power.
There you go. Had you written before? Like,
I've written before. It's more poetry,
okay,
spoken word, and I spoke it my own self.
So you weren't totally new to the realm of putting a story together.
Yeah, it's just the difference is this is autobiography, and you know it's just a situation as you see over there. My book is a hardcover, soft cover. Then online it's a ebook and audiobook.
Did you do the audiobook yourself?
Yeah,
like,
I read it.
Good.
Yes, because you can't pay somebody to speak about my experience.
Yeah.
You can't pay somebody to really feel the emotions of different time periods.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, it's best that it comes from me. That way I have my own voice.
Yeah.
And eventually I did start writing the book. And then, you know, these publishing companies start contacting me. And next thing you know, I realized these deals are not good. Like, for example, there's this one guy who introduced to a publisher. I'm not going to mention his name. Okay. But I already called him out on it. He introduced me to a publisher and a couple of ghostwriters. The ghostwriters didn't do their job, so they had to get let go. Then I looked at the contract from the publisher. You see that soft cover? Mm-hmm. In order to make that, $5,000. $5,000, and this is my own story.
Yeah.
That didn't include making a hardcover, softcover, or ebook. It would have cost more money to make a ebook with her.
Oh, wow.
And then this other company contacted me. Contract looked good, but they said if I signed with them, there's a strong possibility to turn my story into a movie with a music soundtrack. But the problem is they would get most of the money. And I'll get a lion's share, which is a small portion. I'm like, I can't do this. So eventually I ended up choosing to become a self-published author, hire my own editor, book illustrator, pay for the barcodes, ISB numbers. And now I am the first family on both sides to be a self-published author. And when I was working in the schools, that's an interesting experience for the children to see and certain teachers because they don't have a book.
Yeah.
Neither do the administrators. And I'm living proof that life is possible after a near-death situation.
Yeah. It's really interesting about the publishers because self-publishing has gotten really popular as of late, and it's something that has created a lot of access, right, around the publishing culture. So I've talked to a lot of people that have published books. Some of them are with, indie publishing houses, and some of them are self-published. And I've had this conversation a couple of times of, how do you view the publishing industry since self-publishing has become not only available, but accessible to a wide variety of people?
It's about getting access to technology and, of course, the printing press. Because here are the authors telling their story, and next the publishers want to make the most money off of it. So now a person's getting pennies on the dollar. Then if a movie deal comes in, the publisher's getting a part of that. Mm-hmm. Then if a soundtracks get involved, and this is coming from people who are coming in on the back end. Where a person being an indie author, they get to not only maintain their rights, but make the most money off it while everything is in their favor.
Yeah. You
pretty much cut out the middleman by hiring your own middleman. And there's also the fact that, people got stories to tell. These are the creators, or shall I say the creatives. These are the people who have experiences that these publishers don't have.
Yeah.
And I understand way back in the day, things were much different.
Yeah, there was no avenue for this, right? People couldn't just go out and...
There was, but it was just more secretive. Like, for example, publishing companies were given two different deals. They were given a standard deal to people that were European, but when it came to people that were African American or any other culture or heritage, they were ripping them off. And when people caught on, they realized we can't do business with some of these major companies. So we got to create our own avenue. Let's find out, where's the printing press at? Who knows how to illustrate a book? Now let's do this ourselves.
Yeah, that's great. And to be honest, that's, again, not my lived experience at all. So it's not something that I would know about, but absolutely, yes. So it's amazing that you've gotten your all forms of media with your book so far. Audio, paperback, hardback. I love it. You're working on your second book?
Yes.
Awesome. Has anything come through for like a movie or something like that yet?
Not yet. For me, it's just I want to do a documentary first.
Okay. Would that be based on your first or second book or something totally different?
The first book.
Okay.
It'd be like a life's coming attraction leading up to the movie. I do want to do the movie as far as have more of a distribution deal. That way the deal's in my favor. I maintain all rights and I take on the leadership roles. That way no one tries to undermine me. And of course, I'll contact different people for the soundtrack side. Yeah, there's so many ideas I have for the movie.
Yeah.
I look forward to bringing it to life.
That's great. I love it. So you had this reticence to actually pursue being a writer. Now you have all of these things ahead of you. I've noticed on your website that you're a keynote speaker, that you go out and tell your story. We were talking a little bit beforehand, going to schools. So how did you get kind of involved in going from not wanting to tell your story to anybody to being somebody that is comfortable, even if it's always vulnerable, telling your story to help change people's lives or perceptions?
Well, a combination of, at the time I had a friend that was going to Lancaster Country Day School, and his teacher wanted to teach about poetry and spoken word, but instead of her teaching out the book, she wanted to bring in somebody that had the experience, the effect. And that's when he mentioned my name to her, then I got interviewed, and I passed their initial conversation. I didn't speak about my personal story. I just spoke more about the poetry side. Because these are kids coming from wealth, and even they have stories to tell. And I allow them to speak their own stories from their own experiences. That way, they are creators. That way, they can express what they feel on the inside.
Yeah. Because
not all money's good money, because there's people who are pretending to be somebody's friend when they're really just there for the wave of the experience. They want to be there to be in your nice house, because the reality is that if they were really your friend, they want to learn, how did your parents get in this position, and emulate that. Not take advantage of always wanting to be around you just for the sake of that. But it was a wonderful experience at the Lancaster Country Day School. That teacher ended up becoming an administrator.
Oh.
She's a good person. I haven't been in contact with her in a while. Hopefully I reconnect with her and do something at that school. Yeah, that became me speaking at that school, then Franklin Marshall College, then Moser University, and then Hack. I took it serious as a business after I graduated college, summer of 2021. The same year I changed my last name to Poetic.
Okay.
So my last name originally used to be Vaughn, but that last name does not belong to me. It belongs to the German slave master who used to own my ancestors down on the eastern shore of Maryland, which is Cambridge, Maryland, and Old Churchville, Maryland. And when I took my ancestry DNA test in 2018, I didn't have no German in me. There is certain European traits in me, but some of that comes from the Puerto Rican side, and some things come through interracial relationships. I'm not sure it was. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
And then there's also, I'm getting all this recognition. It's time I have a last name to claim as my own.
That's beautiful. So how does your family feel about what you're doing now, telling your story? Are you in contact with them?
Oh, yes. It's a combination of mixed results. I'll start with the honest part. My mom wasn't happy about me telling certain things. But I told her in person, some of the things I talk about, I should have been having that conversation with you first. Therefore, I would have a different story to tell about a different experience. And, there is more to the story, not just me overcoming the car accident, the recovery of being in the hospital, rehab, being on the feeding tube. There is much more to it. There's like this saying, it gets worse before it gets better. Yeah. And I'll leave that for readers to find out in my book because it's a serious situation that does involve the cops.
Oh.
And a whole bunch of other stuff.
This was after your accident and after your rehab. Oh, wow. Okay.
I'll give you a sneak peek. It's like, I thought, my life was going to get better. People were going to treat me better. But it turns out it's not always the case. One day I get a letter in the mail and I get summons to court and I leave it there.
Oh, my. What a cliffhanger.
Yeah. As for my dad, I hadn't seen him for several years when I was in college. And one day, a couple years ago, I was getting ready to sell my book to a judge. It just so happened he wasn't there. If I would have been out of there by a couple minutes, me and my dad would have just missed each other. But instead, what ended up happening was he shows up. I'm writing a letter for the judge by hand, telling him to contact me. All of a sudden, my dad wants to have a talk. He wasn't happy with what I wrote in the book, and I explained to him, like, number one, and this is where I be honest, and I got documents, and this is where I tell him straightforward to his face, man to man, you weren't at one parent-teacher conference or one IEP meeting. And all this is documented by adults, administrators, teachers. My mom's there at the IEP meeting, whether it be by phone or in person. And that kept him quiet. And then there's a situation where, there wasn't enough time to tell him. You had several opportunities to change the narrative, turn things around, make things right, and rectify as a man. But I realized you weren't interested in that. Even when I wrote your letter, even when the senior pastor had a couple conversations with him, even when a church member had a conversation with him, even when his mom warned him about his behavior before she unfortunately passed away later down the road, way back in the early 2000s. And it's more like a situation where a person's past becomes their present. Like, for example, if you leave dishes in the sink and don't clean them up, eventually the stuff on the dishes is going to turn into mold, which turns into a health hazard to the air. And that's my example of a past becomes a present. In my situation, when I have a strange relationship with my parents, sure, you're not going to clean up the mess you made. You're not going to be wanting to have this conversation, but it's always going to be a present because there's going to be this wall and this barrier between us because I evolved more without you two than with you. And it's the honest truth because where were you at for my college? Where were you at when I needed someone to get my driver's license, get my first car, and all this other stuff? I'm turning to other people who are coming into my life and helping me evolve and become a better version of myself. Like, one story I talk about in the book is two things. I get my driver's license. This married couple helps me. And then first car I got was a 95 Ford Taurus, but eventually had its days numbered. Then eventually I got a 2016 red Honda Civic. There was this woman who has been married for several years, and her husband. She took me to the Apple Honda up in York, Pennsylvania. She asked me, what type of car am I going to get? I said, I'm just going to get a car. I show up. This guy had this red car in the showroom, ready for me to test drive. I test drive it on the highway and back, and I said, I want this car. And she said, and the woman asked me, what type of car you got? I said, I'm getting this car. She said, no way. She reaches in her pocket, brings out her cell phone, starts taking a picture of me, and sent a text blast to all her friends. Yeah, at the time, I didn't post it on social media because I didn't want that type of attention.
Yeah.
But I should have posted it because just to show how much I evolved. And two things happened afterwards. The first situation was, even me and my mom were on good terms. I told her to meet me at McCaskey High School for a ride in my brand new car. She was a passenger. She enjoyed the experience, smelled the new car smell, looking around. So I went around the block again. And, she never done that with any of her kids because I'm the only one that, at that time period, that had a driver's license and got a car. That's the exciting part. The other part is I'm in Coatesville. I wanted to get my picture taken with the Welcome to Coatesville sign. And as I'm walking back to my car, I heard someone yelling my name. It's my dad, and he's at a red light. And he sees me go to my red car, and his jaw drops. He says, nice car. And goes away, and I realize he can't take credit. And, it goes back to changing the narrative. He could have helped me got my driver's license, could have helped me got my car, could have said, I helped my son do this and that, but that is not the case.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to tell him I had a new car. It was just more other people told him, but he ended up finding out for himself in that type of way.
Yeah. Yeah. And are your mom and siblings still in the area here?
People are spread out.
Okay. Your dad's still in Coatesville?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you close with any of your siblings?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the siblings I live with, we grew apart.
Oh.
It's just a combination of, different dads. So we got different personalities, different aspirations. And there's a gap.
Okay.
Okay, I furthered my education, got my card, all these accolades. They're here. So if I got help them, I got to go down. But if they want help, they got to meet me on my level. And as a result, it's times where I have to tell a certain individual, you can't be asking me for money.
Sure.
Like, for example, how are you going to ask me to borrow money when I'm working in college and you're working full time? So I had to put a boundary on that.
Yeah.
Then I had to put a boundary on my mom. I'll just say it out loud, basically. Oh, sure, she gave birth to me and everything. But that doesn't give someone a legal right to just call me up and try to treat me like a taxi or Uber or Lyft when there's public transportation available and the app's available to use for a ride. Mm-hmm. I had to put a boundary on her for, I can't be giving you rides in my car because we don't get along. Secondly, you don't want to reconcile. And 3, I have all legal rights to my car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that situation. When it came to my siblings I did not live with, my one sister, me and her are the same age, 2 months apart. We're not close, but we know each other. Mm-hmm. But she just does have 3 kids. I enjoy being an uncle when I can.
Sure.
Then my other 2 siblings, let's see. There's a brother. I got closer to him when, as we became closer more as an adult, instead of going to our dad to see each other, which was like once in a blue moon, or us having conversations over the phone, which is more, I would visit him. Then my other sibling who lived with my dad and his mom, we had a better relationship as adults than him growing up, because time periods where I didn't see or hear from my dad because of that whole favoritism.
Sure.
And that's not a good thing to do, because you still got to take care of your older children, not because, you have a newborn child that lives with you and making it more conditional, or because somebody lives with me doesn't mean for me to, I'll say for my dad to treat someone differently. Yeah. And that can hold a lot of resentment and a big wall, a wall that's bigger than the Great Wall of China.
I'm just so impressed with your ability to kind of look at your situation and see things not as completely black and white, right? Like, I think a lot of us struggle when we're treated certain ways by people that are supposed to love us, struggle with bitterness and resentment. And you, I'm sure it's been a journey for you and continues to be a journey for you, but you sound like you just have such a wider, more expansive view of it, and you can see kind of the patterns that have happened, and not that people don't get held accountable or don't have to take responsibility for themselves, but you're able to kind of put yourself in a place where you remain healthy and you remain able to move forward, and that's important to you.
Yeah, if I didn't, I wouldn't be in the position where I am now. I probably would repeat a lot of things, and a lot of situations, if I would have done, I could have ended up in jail, a bad reputation, or be as involved. And, far too often I see myself in kids, even though I'm not in a single parent household anymore. Yeah. There's times I see parents, or should I say single women, that are pushing a stroller with their kids or in a car with all their kids. And I'm like, oh, that used to be me. there's times where I have conversations with certain individuals and tell them this is not the end all be all. It's just there's certain things that weren't taught to you to make better choices and better discernment about certain men. You know, I'm not looking to be no pastor or anything. It just goes back to a person's mental health and where they're looking to feel love. 'Cause I remember I read this book called The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. And when we don't feel appreciated at home, because that's where the heart is, we start looking for other things. For me, I was looking for sports, being a class clown, sometimes overeating. And yeah, that comes with consequences.
Sure.
For example, they put me on this behavior plan, but you could put me on the behavior plan, but it doesn't get to the source.
Sure.
I could eat as much as I want, but it's not good feeling bloated. I could be this funny guy, have all these stories to tell, but I haven't got to the root. When I did get to the root, I realized this is generational. And I realized I started looking at my own self in the mirror and realized I got to become a better version of myself. And that's what I ended up becoming, doing. Thankfully, I call it much sooner than later.
Yeah. So where do you find community then?
I'll be at the sporting events, musical events, community events, networking events, and of course, being here with you. Then there's also traveling. Then I have a social media presence, but I also make sure I maintain time for myself to, recharge and, self-help.
Yeah. I think it's great that you've been able to kind of branch out and find that community, right? It wasn't given to you. It wasn't handed to you. It wasn't built in for you, but you found people to do life with and who are encouraging to you. And I'm sure you're encouraging to them as well. So it's important, I think, being a part of community.
It is, because at the end of the day, there's somebody who looks at my story and like, oh, all I got to do is change my mindset and become a better version of myself. Ethan had to overcome not only his mindset, but also overcome death, rehab, and some extra stuff.
Just some extra stuff thrown in.
Yeah. It wasn't like I was a juvenile delinquent. It's just a situation where certain adults who are not being the healed version of themselves, they come out in the worst way. And, all that side talking, can't do that side talking with a children's service person, family court, or members of the community, because they're all adults and they can see right through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And me as an adult, I can see right through it. And unfortunately, I get to tell the truth. I get to tell people what I experienced. And hopefully I give them an example of certain parents who are making these bad decisions. Let's stop making these bad decisions, because is this the reputation you want? Is this the type of legacy you want? Because you can be on the Section 8 all you want, but if you're not furthering your education, earn a certificate that can help you make more money and start evolving and doing the work on the inside, you're not building equity.
Yeah.
And when you get there in your age, you might end up become like Big Mama, who's all alone. And the only time people come into the house is when she's hosting something.
Yeah.
Because later on in life, when people enter the eldership years of their life, that's when they really reflect on, wow, I should have made better decisions here and there. Because, a person usually ends up alone on different terms, either as a widow or as a single parent, or just living a single life most of their life. And it's just the reality of it, because I studied the eldership years of other people's lives, and that's what usually happens, because that's the difference between you being taken care of by your family or you know what, we don't get along, let me send you to this nursing home.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Yeah. Well, I have a question that I ask everybody at the end of each episode, which is, through the lens of your experience, what does compassion mean to you?
Even though I was not the healed version of myself throughout my childhood and teenage years and some parts of my adulthood, there's people still willing to come into my life to offer me opportunities to change the narrative, work on myself on an individual level. and provide resources because they saw what was going on or felt compelled to do it. I do that for some student athletes. Like, for example, they might lose a game or a wrestling match, and I just give them words of encouragement if it's timing for me to do that. If not, just be in the background, sit in the stands as a spectator. There's also just being involved with community events. Because, there was times where, kids would see me at the community events, like, there's Mr. Ethan. Next, they grab me by the leg and hug me. And next, I got to step outside my comfort zone all over again, introduce myself to that particular family or a single parent. And over time, either they can talk to me again, or it could just be like, okay, let my kids just go spend time with him. And there's also times where, certain parents tell me, oh, my child is having senior night for football, track, wrestling, volleyball, soccer, field hockey. So they realize I have a certain presence for their kids to be around. I can read between the lines that their father's not there, or maybe been pushed out, or may have passed away. Or in some cases, don't even know they have children because that person decided to keep it a secret. Yeah, overall, I do miss being around kids. There's times where I do see kids at sporting events where I'm used to being energetic with them at inside the classroom, playground, and the lunchroom, but I had to change and hold back and be like, okay, I can wave, I can give them a high five, I can let them hug me, then talk to the parents, and that's it. Well, there's some parents who allow me to be energetic with their kids at certain events because they see that joy on their child's face or children's face, and that brings them joy, seeing somebody in their community that's there and present in their child's life. And that's creating the positive memories and a positive influence.
Sure. Yeah. So you really have a heart for children is what I'm hearing.
I do. It's like, again, I see myself in the kids, so I can relate. And I tell the women, hey, I only was working in the schools to be the building assistant, teacher assistant, or work with kids with special needs. And of course, the after sports program. And then when they get to know me, just having a conversation, whether it's on the side, in the football stadium, inside a basketball court, or a musical event, they're like, oh, you are the real deal. And then when we connect on social media, they're like, oh, I didn't know you know this person. Let me talk to them about, hey, I didn't know my best friend's your cousin. You didn't tell me you were on television. You didn't tell me you made the front page of the newspaper. You didn't tell me you received a proclamation declaration. Yeah, I like to keep certain things on the low unless it's, meant for me to talk about it. Yeah. But it can be an icebreaker. Because then they realize, oh, this guy I was, looking up on the internet, realized he overcame this car accident has evolved. Yeah. And I never know the type of impact that makes for that parent or guardian when they go back home.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you have an incredible story. I look forward to the second book because you left us on such a cliffhanger here. So
the cliffhanger for the second book is basically, it talks about how I ended up in learning support classes, a disadvantaged environment. But a certain situation that happened that involves a police report, medical records. It made the television, it made the radio, and it was the talk of the town. And I used to have these suppressed memories of a certain situation that happened at the house. And I was always wondering, why did the man who was my first stepfather leave? And unfortunately, I found out by going to a certain place where I finally had the courage to find the documents by making an appointment for it. And when I looked at everything, my eyes opened up and I realized this is what my mom didn't want to talk about. And this is where this double standard comes in. A person feels more comfortable talking it over with their friends than they do with the children who experience the situation. And I'll leave that as a cliffhanger.
I know. Now you just got us even more hooked. No, but I do think that your story is incredible, and what you're doing with your story is incredible. And I am just wishing you the best of luck as you move forward to help inspire people and change people's lives and just be the somebody that you needed when you were a kid.
Definitely. My social media handles on Snapchat, Instagram, Lemon8, Threads is Ethan Poetic 23. My name is spelled ETHAN POETIC 23. Then on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and my YouTube channel, I'm Ethan Poetic.
Perfect. And we're going to link to all of that in the show notes, so people just be able to click a link and find you.
And of course, my website is ethanspeaks.com for all serious inquiries for speaking engagements, restorative circles, justice, mediation, and mental health advocacy, and of course, my book.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to The Human Experience. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends and family, share it on social media, and rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also support the podcast financially by going to my website, thehxpod.com, linked in the show notes, and clicking on Donate. It takes a lot of time and resources to create this podcast, so every little bit helps. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours. So be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.